The storm raged outside, rattling the windows of the abandoned house. It stood at the edge of a forgotten town, where no one dared to go after sunset. The house had been empty for decades, or at least that was what people believed. A group of friends, eager to prove the legends wrong, decided to spend the night inside. Jake, the boldest among them, pushed the heavy wooden door open, revealing a dusty, candlelit hallway. The others hesitated before stepping in, their breath visible in the eerily cold air. The door creaked and slammed shut behind them. "Just the wind," Sarah whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. The group huddled together, shining their flashlights through the darkness. The walls were covered in strange symbols, carved deep into the wood. As they moved further in, the air grew thick with an unnatural silence. They reached the living room, where a grand mirror hung above the fireplace, its glass cracked yet strangely reflective. A soft whisper filled the room, though no one had spoken. Ethan, the skeptic, rolled his eyes. "It's just our imagination. Old houses creak and the wind." Before he could finish, his reflection in the mirror moved, blinked, when he hadn't. The others gasped, stepping back, but the mirror no longer showed their reflections. Instead, it displayed a room identical to the one they stood in, but with one difference. In the mirror's version, 5 figures stood watching them from the shadows. A scream echoed through the house, sending chills down their spines. It didn't come from any of them. Desperate to leave, Jake grabbed the doorknob, but the door wouldn't budge. The air thickened, making it hard to breathe. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, came from the hallway. They weren't alone. Sarah clutched her chest. "We have to find another way out." As they turned to run, the figures in the mirror stepped forward, their faces still obscured. But now, the group could hear them whispering, chanting, calling their names. The lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness. When the glow returned, Ethan was missing. A shriek rang from the hallway. Jake ran toward the sound, the others following behind. The hallway seemed longer than before, stretching into infinity. No matter how fast they moved, they couldn't reach the end. "Help me," Ethan's voice came from somewhere within the walls. Sarah screamed as a hand, cold, lifeless, grabbed her ankle. She fell, dragged backward into the shadows before anyone could react. Jake reached for her, but she was gone. The mirror rattled, its surface rippling like water. The figures inside became clearer. They had no eyes, just hollow voids where their souls should have been. They raised their hands, and with a violent pull, Jake and the remaining friend felt themselves being dragged forward, into the glass. The storm outside grew louder, covering their final screams. When silence returned, the mirror was once again still, its surface reflecting nothing but the empty, lifeless room. The next morning, the house stood as it always had, empty, waiting. And in the mirror, the figures had grown in number. Days later, a local sheriff arrived at the house, investigating reports of missing people. The air inside was colder than the storm outside. As he wandered into the living room, his eyes fell upon the mirror. He gasped, because there in the reflection stood the missing friends. Their mouths open in silent screams, their eyes hollow voids of darkness. A shiver ran down his spine as he stepped closer, unable to look away. His breath fogged up the glass, and for a brief second, he saw something moving behind him. He turned abruptly. Nothing was there. But when he looked back at the mirror, his own reflection was gone. A loud knock echoed through the house, breaking the silence. The sheriff spun around, but the front door remained shut. The air turned icy, and he felt something breathing down his neck. He reached for his gun, but his fingers met only empty air. The mirror trembled, and a hand emerged from the glass, its fingers clawing at the frame. The sheriff stumbled back, his heart pounding. The figures inside the mirror were now reaching for him. Their mouths opening wider, their whispers turning to screams. The storm outside raged on as the sheriff's flashlight flickered. Then, in a blink, the room was empty. The mirror stood untouched, reflecting only the vacant space where he had stood moments before. Another visitor lost, another soul trapped, and the house waited, its hunger never-ending.